to get everybody settled in and call to order.
Recording in progress.
Chair Rosenberg,
Present.
Board Member Adcock,
Present.
Board Member Balte,
Present.
Board Member Hirsch.
Present.
We have a quorum.
I'd like to thank everybody for being here for this morning's meeting, Thursday, June 6, 2024, for the Architectural Review Board of the City of Palo Alto. I would like to just take a few seconds to say thank you all to my board members for electing me to serve as chair for the rest of the year. And congratulations to Board Member Chen, who is unfortunately not here today, for her election as vice chair. And I hope to serve my community and my fellow board members well. And I hope to follow in Peter's footsteps here. So thank you guys very much. And I appreciate your patience while I get my bearings in this new position. So thank you guys very much. At this time, we'll do public comment.
Check if there's any changes to the agenda.
Okay.
First, which there are none.
Oh, so mine is out of order. See, I'm already out of order. I'm like, I've got public comment first and then agenda changes, additions and deletions second. Okay.
Okay.
So are there any agenda changes, additions and deletions?
None.
None. Perfect. And then is there any public comment or any public comment cards for items not on the agenda?
No, I have no request to speak.
Okay, perfect. So then we'll dive right into city official reports.
Thank you. And we do have a change on these. We didn't get plan sets for 3000 El Camino Real yet. So we are canceling the June 20th meeting. The July 4th is already canceled as well. So we'll be returning on July 18th.
Okay.
And we have a full schedule that day. So, we do have a couple new projects. Let's see. There was an alternative to the 660 University project that was filed under 680 University. This is a builder's remedy alternative to the project that came before you in the last month for 660 University. The applicant is still moving forward with the 660 University project, but this will be an alternative SB 330 pre-app that was filed. And so it is anticipated to move forward to the Planning Commission and the Council for the planned community rezoning project within the next couple months. So just want to make you aware of that. And then there was
Question, if you don't mind, Claire, sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure so I understand so that the 680 University is still on file. They have not canceled it. They filed a secondary alternative for under 680.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
And the 680 is the SB 330 builder's remedy.
It's an SB 330 pre-app that was filed. Yeah.
And the 660 is just a regular application.
Yes. Oh, well, it's a rezoning application.
Rezoning.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Appreciate the clarification.
And then Summerhill Homes filed a new housing project at 4335 and 4345 El Camino Real, which is 29 units.
So that's the 4335, 4345 El Camino Real.
Yes.
Okay, and that's on packet page 14.
Correct. Or 12.
I also have it on packet page 14. That's just supposed to move up?
I think that was the 330 pre-app maybe.
Got it. So it's just supposed to move up in the column?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Now we have the formal application. They filed the pre-app previously.
And is that something that we should be assigning a pre-ad hoc to? I'm looking at Peter still a little bit.
No.
We could certainly assign an ad hoc if you'd like.
At this time, let's hold off for just a minute and
Okay.
we'll circle back to that next time and see if we need to assign one.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And that concludes the city reports.
Thanks, Claire. All right, if that's it, then we'll move on to agenda item number 1, which is public hearing, quasi judicial, 640 Waverly Street. Consideration of a major architectural review to allow the demolition of 2 existing buildings on a 5,277 square foot lot and redevelopment of the site with a proposed 4-story, approximately 11,403 square foot mixed-use development with ground floor office and 4 residential units above. Environmental assessment, we're apparently waiting on CEQA, I believe, which Claire will get to in a second. And the recommendation from the architectural review board is to review and provide comments, then continue the project to a date uncertain.
Thank you.
Always that. And then may I please ask for disclosures?
I have visited the site.
I also visited the site.
Yes, I visited the site and spoken with the architect several times.
I didn't visit the site.
Sorry, I have one more disclosure. I wasn't here when it was previously presented, so I have watched the wonderful recording of the previous version of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah. All right. Claire Raybold, Principal Planner. This project before you today is 640 Waverly Street and located near Forest Avenue and Waverly Street in our commercial downtown community zone district. The project includes replacing 2 existing buildings on a 5,227 square foot parcel with a new 4-story mixed-use development. It will have ground floor office and 4 residential units. I do want to note that in the prelim application, staff had indicated that the existing buildings were residential uses. They do appear to be residential uses, but upon further exploration, they have been in office use for many years now, and there's no record that indicate they were actually in residential use in any time in the history before that. So we are considering the existing uses to be office, but they'll be replaced with ground floor office and 4 residential units. Total floor area ratio is 2.16 to 1, about a little over 11,000 square feet. And there will be 6 parking stalls for residential use only in the parking garage. They're not required to provide any parking for the site, so they're not providing parking for the office use. But there are 6 stalls, 2 of which are ADA stalls and count twice, so that's why the plans reference 8 parking stalls. The project is designed to meet the intent of the objective standards versus the actual objective standards. So the major ARB process applies in this scenario. So this will be the first formal hearing for the project. And we would return to the ARB following completion of the CEQA to ask for a recommendation. The project will be subject to the context-based design criteria, the downtown design guidelines, CDC zone district requirements, and the ARB findings. And this is just a quick visual of the site plan. And key feedback requested is just related to the massing, site planning, material selection, and context-based design criteria consistency, particularly transition and privacy. The staff report outlines the comments that were provided by the Architecture Review Board in general last time when this came before you as a prelim. A lot of the comments related to privacy and transition, as well as providing modifying the massing and the use of materials and how they were applied to the project, and really reducing the amount of concrete and increasing the greenery on the site, and the materials like wood materials, more natural materials. And with that, the staff recommends that board members review the application, provide feedback, and continue the project to a date uncertain. And the applicant does have a presentation as well that they'd like to share.
Thank you, Claire. So the applicant now will have 10 minutes to present.
Good morning, Chair Rosenberg, and congratulations on your elevation. My name is Ken Hayes with Hayes Group Architects. I'll be making the presentation on behalf of my clients, James Lynn and Clarissa Shen.
And Ken, while we have done this 100 times with you before, could you kindly state and spell your name?
Oh, my name is Ken Hayes, Kenhayes with Hayes Group Architects.
Thank you.
James is with me here in the audience today, and Clarissa, his wife, I believe, is joined via Zoom. Also via Zoom are Mason Hayes with my office and SWA Landscape Architects and Sandus, in case you have questions for them. I'd like to thank Claire Raybold for helping us bring the application before you today. So let me go ahead and hopefully everything works. So 640 Waverly is in the CDCP zoning district. It has a PF parking facility behind, and across the street is zone RM40. There's 640 Waverly. It's a mid-block site. To the north is 636 Waverly, which is a 4-story, 50-foot mixed-use building. And to the south is 650 Waverly, and actually the owners of that building are here in the audience today. And that's an existing Category 2 historic structure. And then at 635 Gilman, we have another 5-story, 50-foot plus existing building, residential building in the neighborhood. And as I said, the parking facility is behind. The upper right-hand view is a view from the farmer's market at the public parking facility. I think it's lot G behind, and then a frontal view of the 636 Waverly, so you can see what happens on the side of that facing 640. And then in the bottom row, sort of to the right, is the 640 Waverly existing building. The yellow house is the historic structure, and 636 to the right. The neighborhood is very eclectic, as we all know. Project statement is respond to the nature of the site and the context and add 4 new homes, including the owner's residence, provide ground floor commercial space, accommodate below grade parking, and integrate sustainable systems and features to try to achieve a net zero goal for the project. In terms of precedence, it's what we showed last time. We want to connect with nature through integrated plants and daylight and air. On the right-hand side, we want to set back a 4th floor pavilion to increase privacy, to increase open space, and to reduce the mass on that upper floor. We want to provide materials that Claire pointed out, sort of that are long-lasting and durable, including concrete, painted metal, and wood as well. The upper photographs are, we're doing we want to have this sculpted edge along the property edges. We're calling them green lanes, and you'll see that in a minute, but where we have opportunities for light, air, and plantings for the use of architectural elements of courtyards and skylight wells, that sort of thing. On the bottom, just some ideas of how we're controlling privacy, solar access, deep overhangs, that sort of thing there. Site plan that Claire already pulled up, the main residential entry located here. We have a separate commercial entry located there, and then the automobile entry here to a car lift in a one-way driveway. The ground floor commercial space is about 2,300 square feet, and the existing office is like 1,600 square feet, so not much bigger than what exists today. We've created this whole new idea on this side of the building from what you saw last time, when we have a covered paseo over here that opens up to the courtyard, the driveway, light and air, allows you to see the side of 650 next door. And it also provides, oops, my presentation stalled. Interesting. There we go. Provides access to the rear trash area as well as the stair. And at the back of the building, there's a slot basically that separates the stair tower from the ground floor mass. And that allows sort of a view corridor at the very end. So that's the Paseo. I mentioned the trash room at the end, the course for bringing the trash bins out to the street shown there in yellow. They'd be staged at the street, and then the residential is coming up from the garage. That'll be staged at the street also, and on separate days, most likely for alternating pickups. This is the refuse room in the garage. You would take the cans up the lift on trash day. And Claire mentioned that we have 8 parking spaces, but 6 are really parking spaces in the garage for the residential uses. The height at 50 feet is similar to 636 Waverly next door. I mentioned we're trying to create these green lanes on both sides to begin to modulate what happens at the interface and create sort of a buffer. The green lane, let me back up. The green lane on the 636 side is the first one that you see here, and it sort of goes from the street and kind of steps up and through the buildings where we take plantings and create opportunities for landscaping and light and air. And then on the south side, or the 650 side, it comes in on the driveway with landscaping to the courtyard, and then we have vegetation that will climb the stair both front and back. The site plan, again, just walk you through the building. We've got a 1-bedroom unit in the front with a large terrace. At the back is a 2-bedroom unit with a large terrace to the rear. We've got some privacy screens on the front. This is the 3rd floor with a matching unit, 1-bedroom at the front with its terrace. And then at the back on the 3rd floor are the bedrooms for the owner's unit. And then they have a terrace off of that. Plus they have an interior stair that you see there adjacent to stair number 1 that will take you to the next floor up. And we have a privacy screen at this 3rd floor level as well. This is the 4th floor pavilion. It's really the living area, the entry area for the owner's unit, but connected with that stair. You can see how the green lane kind of comes through on that 636 side of the building to create the garden. And then you see the generous terrace wrapping 3 sides of the building. Proposing an all-electric building, hopefully a 30 kilowatt PV array will do the job up on the roof. So at the preliminary hearing, one of the comments was to consider separating the trash facilities for residential and commercial. We had them all in one. So we have separated those, as I described earlier. Commercial's on the ground floor, the residential is in the basement, and it comes up via the lift, rather. Another comment that we received was we should consider reducing the mass at the rear stair, maybe break down the pattern or have material changes at the rear. So what we've done is we've separated the stair mass from the ground floor piece. That's that slot at the end of the Paseo, and created a fluted pattern, textured pattern on part of that ground floor, and then planted vines on the stair tower itself. Our stair tower is over 10 feet smaller than the one at 636, just as context there. Another comment had to do with concrete might be too cold and maybe not the most sustainable material. So we've significantly reduced the low carbon concrete mass at the 650 side of the building. We no longer have a grid that you see on the left, but rather we've created more of a plinth versus a frame. We've introduced more kind of warm painted metal as a body to the building. And at the roof, we've extended the roof, kind of a hovering plane that is clad with wood below. So you see this warmth as you look up. And of course, we've already talked about all the plants and green lanes that we're trying to incorporate in the building. Consider a more expressive roof form for the top. And so previously above and then at the bottom, we've really redesigned the roof to kind of privilege the views from below. The profile will be very thin, and it acts more like a terminus as opposed to an appendage on the top. And so we were happy with that. And then along the property line with 636, we're really trying to do a dance with the building. At the second floor, the 636 building has the blue line, which is glass. And so our levels 3 and 4 above step back to allow light into that light well void on 636. If you go up to the third floor, our building starts to step back with that green lane as it comes through, provides sufficient separation to the building next door, but also allows for privacy for both buildings, in fact, by having solid walls. And then once we get up to the pavilion level, we step back even more. You see the green lane come through with the garden, the entry porch, allowing views to the front. And then we have also concerns about privacy there. So we have privacy walls that are a little bit lower added there. Some 3D views of the building from the front. The materiality is warm painted metal. The underside of the roof is clad in wood. And then the ground floor has the textured concrete. You can see how the plants kind of are elevated up and through the building. This is the paseo. On the left is the driveway, the commercial entry on the right, and just a few more shots. And the shades at the front, the privacy screen is intended to be operable. And then a shot at the back. I think that's it. Oh, there's the courtyard. And then that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. At this time, I think that we'll hold off on questions to the applicant, and I'd like to hear if there's any comments from the public.
Yes, I have one speaker card from Roger McCarthy.
Morning, sir. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Kindly state and spell your name when you get started.
I won't need 3 minutes. I'm Roger McCarthy, MCCARTHY, and I'm joined here today by my wife, Jane. We reside at 650 Waverly. So I think it is pretty clear from all the diagrams where the little white structure that's to the left in all the images. And we are the most impacted people in Palo Alto by this project. From the beginning, which has taken an obscenely long time to get through, in my humble opinion, James Lynn and his wife have been extremely sensitive and receptive to our concerns and our needs and our previous position in the neighborhood. They have been guests in our home around the dining table with these plans, with glasses of wine to go over what's going on. The fact that the driveway is on the left, was Mr. Lynn's concession to us from the beginning to give our house, the historic 1902 Laumeister, its appropriate setting. On the left, we have a 4-story condo, so we already have the 4-story setback on the left side. And what would happen with this project? We just end up with 4 stories on the right side. Now, would this be our preference for a project? No. We want Mr. Lynn to build a park, perhaps a duck pond, and it would be very nice. But realistically, we're in the commercial development district. This is going to have to be developed. It should be developed. And God knows we need the housing units. So this plan preserves our light. And we already have a pretty good feel of what it's like to have a 4-story structure 1 driveway away from you, because we already have one. And it makes surprisingly less impact than you might think. And I wouldn't have known that until living there. By the way, as I think about it, I want to confirm one thing that Claire said to you. We've been there 25 years and we've never seen either of these structures used as residential. So they have been office for as far back as we know. And as a result of the sensitivity of Mr. Lynn and his wife to our concerns, they have preserved our light, they have given us a set off, and they have given us a setting. Jane and I feel we're never going to find another developer next door with a sensitivity to our concerns of Lynn and his wife. So we implore the ARB to approve this project because I can't imagine us doing better for something downtown. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Are there any other public comments or speaker cards?
No, just the one.
None at this time. Okay, we're going to close this hearing for public comment. And at this point, I'd like to turn it back over to the board for discussion. Does anyone have a desire to start? You may ask questions of the applicant or the neighbor.
have a question for Claire regarding the CEQA process for this project. And we know it's been in this process for a while. What is the timeline that you're thinking that this might come back for final approval?
So just to clarify, this actually hasn't been in process. This project has not been in process for very long. There was a previous project proposed that was never constructed several years ago, and then a prelim that came in about a year ago. But this project was just recently filed. We are kicking off the CEQA. We expect to do a 15183 exemption. And that's streamlining under the comprehensive plan. We do expect that to be a few months of review and preparation of technical analyses that are still required to support the exemption before returning to the ARB.
To follow up on that, so what would you estimate the earliest timeline this project could come back?
I would certainly
Fall?
hope, I expect fall, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Should I launch into my questions? Or
Well, I
Peter,
have-
do you want to go first?
Yeah, you go first. I have a couple of questions.
So thank you, Ken, for your presentation. I have a few kind of technical questions before we get into much further. The egress for onto stair 2, I see that only from the 4th floor. Is that not required for the other floors?
Correct.
Okay. My next question is about the movable movable shades. Is that intended to be manual? How do those operate?
It is intended to be manual.
Kind of like a
Sliding.
sliding,
Yeah.
like a rail
Correct.
system? Okay. Last question is about the planting. So on all of the terrace levels, you've got the garden areas. How do those get maintained? Like they appear to be a raised planter bed, but quite deep. My main concern is actually on the 2nd floor level towards the street. I think it's on the 2nd floor.
Sheet
The
202?
third, sorry, yeah, 203, I think. Yeah, on the 3rd floor level on 203. The long planter.
Right. The purpose of the door out of the stair number 1 would
Right.
be to access that planting area. The part that says terrace
Mhm.
is actually covered with building, right? There's a
Right.
solid wall to your left. So there's no opportunity to plant there. So that's a
Right.
solid terrace. And then you'd be able to get to the planter that way. It might be that part of the planter is low and then we have a raised portion at the front. But the idea is that you have access that way to
Okay,
get
so
to it.
it's like walkable from the terrace level
Correct.
to, but it's
Yes.
not a raised planter.
I think it'll be raised at the end.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, because looking at the section, I couldn't really tell if that was, sill height kind of planting. And so like, because the railing on the street edge would want to be protecting from the highest walkable level.
Yeah, we don't want people maintaining the plants to have to get up into the planter for obviously
see.
risk of fall. So all the plants would be maintained from floor level and
Okay.
being able to reach, or low garden plantings. And then if we need a deeper planter toward the end where the edge is, then they would access it by crossing over the other plants, but not at a higher elevation.
Okay, so that's true for pretty much all of the.
All the
planting.
other
Yeah.
plants, yeah, like at the back and all, those are all planters. Most likely outside, like if you go to 202, the rear terrace, those planters there are outside of the railing. So they're adjacent to the railing, so you just reach over to maintain them, but they're outside of the railing, so they don't physically act as a rail at that location because we have a rail.
On the left-hand plan?
On the A202 on the
Right.
left side,
Okay.
yeah. And similarly, on A203 on the upper floor.
Okay, and similarly, I have several planting questions. So on the first floor on A201,
And SWA, you're on the call, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Happy
Is
to
that,
answer questions.
is that Ben? Okay, Ben can, if you've got really great landscape questions, I'd rather have Ben answer them.
it's more like how do you access? So it's like in between architecture and landscape.
Okay,
So going back to the first floor plan on like to the right, basically you have that concrete wall and then planting behind it and then
Correct.
glass.
yes.
How do you get there to access? And-
Oh, so Ben, I'll take this one. The front wall is a full height shear wall. The
Right.
two return walls are just low planter walls. And so they're 3 feet high. And so that planter is a raised planter so that you see it from inside the building, which is why the glass continues across. So for instance, if you were inside the building, you get sort of the glancing
Yeah.
views out, right? But the landscape is
Yeah.
kind of the buffer in front.
Okay. And I think my last planting question is around the stair tower. Looks like you're doing planting on the parking lot side, like a little area to grow vines.
Next to the lift?
Next to the trash enclosure, the office trash.
Oh, I'm sorry, at the total back of the
Yeah,
building.
total
Uh-huh,
back.
yeah, right. So we have a setback of, I think, 18 or 20 inches at the back.
Mhm. And on the right side in plan, it looks like you're planting onto the metal, the painted metal screening. Where's that planting coming from? I saw that on your renders, but where's that?
So I'm not completely following you, but all the way around the building, we have 12 inches of soil,
Mhm.
which is really where the soldier piers and lagging are going to be, but we'll remove them down 5 feet. So there's opportunity to plant in the ground all the way around the three sides. And at the front, it's my understanding that the plants there are growing on the concrete wall. And you're referring to a metal screen between the car lift and the paseo?
No, between the car lift and stair two, like on the stair two wall.
Oh, uh-huh. Yeah, so that's concrete, that wall is concrete. It's concrete and, let me see if I.
On the first floor level, right? So if I go to 201,
Uh-huh.
it's concrete and it's that edge of that courtyard.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
this.
looking at this render, it
Yeah,
looks
yeah.
like plants
So
are
that-
coming down
correct.
from above. Is that,
Correct. I think that the idea is that those plants are growing up onto the vine. We don't have planters above, but we certainly could accommodate planters above. But yes, you're right. It does look like they generate there, but the idea is that those are plants planted in the raised planter at the ground level that would grow up.
yeah.
And you're
Yeah,
right. It looks like they're growing down.
Mhm.
Unless,
Can
Ben, yeah, you guys
This
want
is,
to?
this is Mason. So
can
with
you
respect
kindly-
to the,
sorry to interrupt. Can you kindly state and spell your name for the group so that everyone can be aware of who's speaking? Thank you.
yeah, apologies for the interjection. Mason Hayes, MASONHAYES.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so the idea is that for the slatted portion of the rear stairs, so the portion that faces Waverly, that there would be planters, like channel planters, intermittently at the levels inside the stair or just outside of the slats. So that would promote basically the growing down of those vines on the second, third, and fourth level.
Are those shown on the landscape drawings?
They are.
They are not?
No, they are.
They are.
They
Okay.
are.
My apologies then.
Yep. No problem.
So they have it right.
Oh, it's outside. I see the cute little stars on the landscape plan, but not on the architectural plans. Then how does one maintain those if it's growing outside of the slats?
Oh, it's an opening at the top floor. I
Right.
think the channel planter is on the inside. There's also intermittent openings, so it's not, solid ribbed metal, as I understand it. So there's opportunity to either, reach through or have the channel planter, on the inside of the stair with the plants growing on the outside.
So at each level of the stair landing, there would
That's
be
right.
access to it. Okay, and so on this render, that's a good, useful one where on the south side towards the historic house,
Uh-huh.
there are no vines on that shown on this render, but we see it on the south, or I don't remember, west maybe, on the parking lot side. Is it intended that the whole concrete stair enclosure would eventually be covered in vines?
I think that's the intent, that it'll, grow around from the back, and then there'd be plantings on the side. And so the vines will kind of have their way, I think, on the concrete.
Thank you. That's it for my questions right now.
Great, thank you.
Can I follow up on that? Maybe a question for the owner even. This project is ambitious with its landscaping. Would you entertain having some condition of approval to help ensure that the plants survive? These will take some maintenance. The building next door at 640 has proposed a lot of screening plants like this, and they haven't fared that well. If we were to put some condition that the city were to have a way of.
We do have a standard condition that all plants proposed must be maintained.
Something perhaps more stringent. Is that something you would be willing to consider? I'd like to hear them on the record say.
Yeah, you're going to want to make sure the building looks good.
Hello, this is James Lin. Do I need to spell my name? Yeah, JAMESLIN. I'm the owner, and we've been at this project for over 13, 14 years. And very excited to be here. And to Peter's question about maintenance, we obviously want to have everything done properly for the site because we intend to live there. So I'm not sure what the conditions that we need
Suppose
to
you
do.
were requested to submit an annual report to the city documenting the condition of the landscaping, so the planning department could just see it.
I don't
Claire, I just
know
wanna
that
see- I wanna
staff
get- I
is
wanna get his
interested in
answer on
that. We
this.
don't have the resources to
I'd like to
be
get his
reviewing
answer on that
those.
question, please. Is that something you would entertain doing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to. I mean, the intention is good. I mean, obviously, it's something that we will entertain to have it done, but I'm not sure it's something that we can commit to.
Well,
right
and if
now.
I might jump in here,
Yeah.
while I appreciate the intent of the questioning, Peter, I think that it's a little unfair to the applicant because what is he supposed to say right now? No, right? That's.
No.
I think that, that's really not something staff is interested in pursuing, is having conditions of approval to have, annual landscaping reports for every single project across the city submitted to us on a regular basis. Like that's not something that we have the capacity to be reviewing, and it's just not our standard practice. I don't think we'd be interested in that, but we do have a standard condition of approval that requires that all landscaping on a site that's proposed must be maintained in perpetuity. And so, if a site starts looking bad and the landscaping isn't being maintained, then we can, come back and enforce that condition of approval as needed.
Okay, I'm going to go ask some other questions, but I'm not very satisfied that the landscaping will survive, and therefore my opinion of the project changes. The project right now is presented as a landscaping project to some large extent. It's what the architect said. And so I'm looking for some means of being reassured that that's actually going to happen. I hear the owner say he'll entertain the idea. I steer staff undercutting me. So I hear everybody. To the architect, please. On the 640 or 636 side of the building, on the right-hand side, I'd like to understand how the concrete wall, which is really what the neighbors see, impacts or relates to the glazing on that building. So if you start, for example, on the third floor, the planting area and then the access, the terrace that accesses that.
I'm sorry, third floor?
On the third floor, yes, I'm going to look at sheet.
So I have that view up.
Wonderful, yes. So the place where it says terrace, it's dimensioned 11 feet 8 inches from the neighbors there.
Right.
That concrete wall, is that adjacent to glazing or solid wall on the neighbor's property?
So the blue highlighted line is the 636 glass line.
That's what I thought.
And outside of the glass line is a 5-foot roof terrace of 636. And then there's a void that drops off to the floor below and is open to the sky above.
Right.
And then if you continue back, the terrace enlarges to 10 feet wide opposite the master bedroom, but that's a solid wall. So the master bedroom does not necessarily look towards our building. It's intended to kind of look towards the street.
So thanks for explaining that. So on the third floor, the piece of concrete wall on your building currently, the one that's adjacent to the staircase and that terrace is what is 11 feet 8 inches from the neighbor's glazed wall.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, who just drew that? Oh, okay. Yeah, thought my staff might have been messing around or something.
And then if you go up to the fourth floor, could we do the same look?
Yeah, fourth floor. So a little bit different here, Board Member Belte. So you see the elevator, you come off the elevator, and that is what we're calling the entry porch. That's covered, but it's correct, but it's not. And so as you come out of there and make a U-turn and go in the entry door, that's all covered. The garden is open to the sky, and then everything obviously to the right of that porch is open to the sky. The wall that is the tallest wall, it stops at the interior stair at the edge of the garden, and that aligns with 636. Right.
So,
right.
So when you're looking from 636 towards this building, the concrete wall that's at the right-hand side of the garden and the entry porch, I guess you'd say the north side, is that wall, how high is that relative to the floor of the other building?
Is 9 feet.
Above the floor of the neighbor's building or?
Above our floor level, which is essentially the same. And we're almost matching the floor to floor.
So looking out on the fourth floor from your neighbor's building.
Correct.
All that glazing is basically facing a blank concrete wall.
Is facing the concrete wall. All the 90-degree glazing is facing the street.
Okay.
But we want that wall to be lower. I mean, we could even entertain that wall being probably 8 feet. There's no magic number. But I think what's important is that when you're looking out, and privacy is important for both parties, but it'd be nice to see sky.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And so that's the idea, is we want to be able to see sky. And you're probably not going to see plants in the garden. And then so those would be the walls, Peter, or I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, Peter's fine.
Okay. Would be the red. So the red highlighted walls would be the lower walls, not as high as the building.
Right. So the reason the wall is out at the fourth floor level is because you want privacy at the entry porch. On the third floor level, however, all you have there is really a terrace, which is really just to access the planter.
Right.
So
however, if I go down there, you can't have an opening. Right. So because we have it covered above, right, that wall that's 11 foot 8 from the glass line of 636 has to be there because we can't have an opening on a property line. Right. And so
an opening from a building, but if it were a planter and you had an opening in the wall to the planter, wouldn't that look much nicer from the neighbor's property?
What I'm saying is that property line wall that is right above the word terrace cannot have any openings in it. It has a floor above it, which is the entry porch.
Sorry to interrupt, but is the wall even necessary is I think what Peter's getting at on the terrace. on the north
This wall
side.
here, yes, it
Yeah.
is necessary. It's a building code requirement. You can't have an opening on a property line. Right?
But like on the planter, you
Right.
don't have a wall, right? So if the
Right.
terrace became like the planter, then you wouldn't need that wall.
So I'm sorry, I don't have a drawing of that side, but maybe, maybe I can go a little bit
Are
further
you
here.
saying that you would access interior from the elevator instead of to the exterior, and then you would just have the planter, but then?
I don't have, so
Um,
I don't have a section. Oh, maybe I do.
I thought you had a section. Yeah, on 301, we can look at that.
Okay, so this is what you're talking about. So the planter you see towards the front of the building there with the 2 trees and the plantings, right? That terrace that comes out of the stair to access that planter is there to the left. And above it is the floor of the entry of the 4th floor. And so by definition, any opening in the wall that you're looking at would be an opening in a property line wall. I mean, yeah, you could put an opening there, but it would have to have like a Pilkington 1 hour translucent wall panel or something like that. You can't have an opening there. It's a building code violation.
Because if you bring the planter underneath, like that other planter isn't underneath anything.
So for instance, if we wanted to put an opening, let's say this, I'm not, let's, I can't draw. My computer's not letting me draw. Anyway, if for instance, at the entry porch on the 4th floor, if we didn't have that little roof there, that thin roof to protect it, that wall is not even needed.
Okay, so
Right?
that was my question.
Because there's
is
nothing
the wall
above it.
needed?
It's not an opening in a building, right? It's just open to the sky, just like the planter area is open to the sky.
Yeah, I'm not sure I fully agree with you, Ken. I think that the opening into the building would be at the elevator plane of the building, not the property line plane. But we could, I don't know. I'm just,
Yeah.
From my point of view, it would make the view from the neighbor's building more appealing, just to have a little more texture to that wall. If you look at your elevation facing the neighbor, it's pretty stark. So we can come back to that as we discuss it, but that's sort of my looking for a way to try to minimize the impact on the neighbor.
I do think we can, and again, Chair Rosenberg, maybe you could do the drawing.
Happy to try.
So where we have the garden and the entry porch, we could, that whole wall, yes. And so if that line went up 8 feet to the bottom of that thin little roof, I mean, that could step, yes, correct, down like that.
But it could
That
step
wall
down
could
like
have
that.
openings in it because there's no roof above where the garden part is. It just wouldn't be able to have openings where we have the thin roof.
But
So,
the thin roof
yes,
is
right.
like a canopy over the elevator,
Well, over the terrace
correct.
outside the elevator. That's
right.
not interior to the building.
right?
Yeah,
It's just an architectural feature, really.
Right.
yeah, no, it's,
Like
if the only way that you could make it open is if you could design the canopy as a projection, right? So
Right.
you can have projections.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? But in the case of the 3rd floor, it's not a projection. And even if it is, you try to argue that it could be a projection, you're not going to be able to get closer than 3'4" to the property line, right? Because projections cannot encroach where, beyond 1/3 the distance to where openings are required to be protected. So it's very challenging.
Yeah, no, I understand that. We'll come back to it more.
Yeah.
My second question for the architect is regarding the privacy screening on Waverly Street. Can you describe more how that functions and what it's made like? We don't have any material samples here, do we? Or
We have, so the company that makes this,
Claire, could we get those samples?
the company that makes the metal rib siding has accessories, basically, bars, flat bars, the whole bit. And so they make panels like that. So that would be part of that system.
So ballpark, how big are the slats? They're vertical pieces of metal, and how far apart are they? What percent of that?
That is it right there. I mean, that's a
This is a one-to-one.
photograph of an actual sample that we have in our office. And I was going to bring it this morning, but I forgot to bring it home last night from
But
the
do you
office.
know offhand, are the bars an inch and the opening
Yeah,
4 inches, or is
Oh,
it?
no, it's
This
much
is a
tighter.
one-to-one.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's whatever that, it's like 3/4 and
Half inch.
you can get different spacing if that's your question. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what your design intent is. I mean, how much privacy and opacity are you after? How much
Right.
is it a texturing of the building? Are they sliding panels? Do they move?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so it looks like there's maybe 3 panels that slide laterally.
That's right. And they park against, I think, the one on the right, if you're looking at the building from the front.
Are these panels at the owner's request or the architect's design intent to
This
get
is
it?
part of our design intent. Yeah, we're trying to get the main body of the building to read sort of as one.
Okay, great. Thank you then. My next question is for staff, so you can, Claire, the parking situation on this building is such that they're not required to have any parking. Is that right?
Correct. It's within a half mile of a major transit stop.
And do you know if that applies to ADA required parking as well? If they're not required to have parking, does that mean they don't need any ADA parking?
That is correct.
Okay.
But if they provide parking, they must meet ADA requirements.
So the question here is regarding the parking is accessed by a car elevator to get down into the lower level.
Correct.
And is that considered a legitimate ADA parking then, that you have to somehow have an automatically operated lift that you can drive in, go down and get out again? Because we've had other projects where that didn't fly. And the ADA parking had to be at grade, which was accessible without this kind of machinery.
I can verify with our building department, but they didn't express any
So maybe-
concerns about
Ken,
that.
do you know the answer to that then? And does elevator access to parking comply with ADA standards?
That is my understanding. Yes, as long as they can reach the controls that are, required to be at a certain height. So
Yeah,
like
you
would
wouldn't be able to have to get out of the car
Right.
to control the panel and then have to go down.
So in this particular situation, you have to be able to pull up, the gate has to open automatically. You have to be able to pull onto the lift and have it somehow operate automatically or with just reasonable access from the vehicle.
Yes.
And is that
Yeah.
something the city will actually be checking that as we go through the building permit phase, I guess, then?
We have requested some more information about the functionality as part of this phase, but yeah, that it would be also something that we
Yeah.
would be very much looking at and making sure they're complying
And
with at
and
the
this gets
building.
put on the applicant because they're providing parking at all, they're going to have to provide this ADA parking as well. So
Correct.
that's sort of making it really difficult just because they're doing something they don't have to do.
Correct, but in a lot of these kind of scenarios where you have a residential use, it's more desirable for occupants to have at least one parking. So I think a lot of developers have, been providing parking, at least to some degree, even if it's not required.
Yeah, no, I understand that you want the parking and I understand the ADA rules. It just, I've never seen it accessed with an elevator before. But okay, it doesn't really affect the ARB. Those are my only questions. Thank you.
Good question.
Any questions?
Yeah. Have a couple of questions. Where are you providing access to the roof for the maintenance of the solar collectors, et cetera?
Oh, good question. My screen has frozen again, so I don't know why. But if you turn to, so we've worked with fire, with Palo Alto Fire, and what we've agreed is that the stair number, bless you, the stair number 2. So go to, board member Hirsch, go to sheet A205. So that's the stair at the rear where we have equipment. There's a ship's ladder that will go from that stair, fourth floor up to the roof. And then there's a ladder that goes over the parapet to the roof that has the PV panels on it.
Okay.
And that's all in that bubbled area that came through the process, basically, as a revision.
Is everybody happy with the idea of going to the cellar to drop off garbage on the way out of the building here? We've had a lot of discussion the first time we looked at the project about getting garbage out to the street here. It's a pretty,
We don't know who the tenants are going to be at this point, other than James and Clarissa. And they seem to think that it's fairly convenient. They would take the garbage down if they're going out, in their car.
in their vehicle. I could
Right.
understand that. That's an obvious way to
Yeah.
take it out. But for those who don't have a vehicle, perhaps even at this building, then they have to go to the cellar every time in order to remove their garbage. It's-
So be it. I have to walk up a hill to get to my garbage. I mean, I think that it's part of,
Mhm.
I think once you are acquainted with sort of the protocols of the building and how to use the building, that you'll just know that that's, if you're going to go to your car, you're going to take your garbage maybe. Certainly separating them is something that Green Waste wants us to do.
Yes.
separate the commercial.
Well, certainly the office garbage is separate that way.
Right.
So that's quite reasonable, and it's not difficult to take the pails out from that level. It's a real pain in the butt to sort of take the garbage up from the basement floor. It's hard to kind of imagine an alternative to this, except that it may be.
It's just the site. It's just there's so much stuff to
Yeah. Okay.
fit.
Well.
I mean, the alternative is that you're putting the trash along the frontage of the
Frontage of
site,
the
and it's a
site.
fairly small
Right.
frontage of the site. and
Right.
so-
Understood.
Right.
Yeah, but
Right. I mean,
that was the only other alternative, was to put it
Yeah.
somehow nearer the front door so that you could
Yeah.
get to it, which would mean you'd have to modify the office area in some way
Mhm.
in order to provide an enclosed area. I just think it's kind of a problem for tenants that it is not too well, but it's an alternative, I guess, that you have to make a choice. My thought is that the passageway almost suggests that you could put the office entry on the side of the building, and then the front of the building, which is kind of landscaped out of view, could be used for garbage.
I would agree that you could put an entrance on the side. I think the city likes to have entrances face the street. And so it's kind of, I don't think that I like the door where it's located, but is that the only place where it could be? I mean, certainly the Paseo could be activated. We're thinking that the Paseo is also activated by sliding doors. But the Paseo also, this is an exit passageway, right? So we've got fire issues on that wall. So any kind of a operable panel would have to be something that always closes behind you. But we'd want to see some kind of connection between the office and the courtyard. Right now it's visual.
Yeah, then the Paseo, right, with the actual door swing or whatever, from an exit door from the office would be a problem in the Paseo.
Yeah, it could be, yeah.
Unless it was wide enough to accommodate the door swing.
Right.
Admittedly, it's a problem, but frankly, I would probably have pushed towards the garbage more conveniently located and chosen the alternative of putting it somehow enclosed in the front of the building. But that's your choice. In terms of the planters, are they all going to have automatic watering devices?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
maintenance wouldn't as mentioned before, wouldn't be so critical unless something dies in the planter box. The parking, I don't notice that you have a diagram of the way in which the cars will turn around within the parking area and maintain frontage, to be able to, obviously you wouldn't want to back onto the elevator. So have you worked that out in the drawing there somewhere?
We do have a drawing that Sandus prepared for maneuvering. And it's not ideal. So we're still trying to think, maybe since we have 8 spaces technically, planner Raybold, if we made one of the spaces a turn in to back out space, that would help us solve that problem. And we'd still we have no parking requirement. We can do whatever we want, right? We could have one space down there as long as we met ADA, right? So I suspect we're going to have to, remove one of the parking spaces and make it a turnaround.
Yes,
Yeah.
seemed logical, right? And it'll be a little kind of tricky that there'll be some maneuvering within the space, but it's that's going to be life for those who park down there. I mean, I think it's a very big improvement over what we saw the first time anyhow, to have
Thank
the
you.
elevator for that, for the parking area. So, I don't have too many other questions about that. I think it's a really well worked out scheme for the units within the building and the spaces and the outdoor usages, et cetera. So let's see, just one. Those were my major concerns.
I'm really perplexed why my screen is frozen. I can't even move. I don't even have a cursor.
Can I ask a follow-up question on
Please, go ahead.
the trash? So on A 0.12, the diagram for the path, how a resident brings the trash to the trash room, and then is the intent that the car lift is how the trash goes?
Goes up, correct.
And is that individual residents moving their own trash?
No, James is going to have someone that does that.
Okay, so it's maybe not as complicated. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I will note it is a smaller bins too. It's not
Yes,
the
I know.
They're
really
totes,
large.
right.
Yeah.
Just one quick question. So why are the bins going in the main elevator in the first place?
They're not. That's a mistake.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, I have a few questions as well, and we'll try and get this wrapped up. Some of my questions, for the tenant for the office, you guys have no specified tenant at this time, is that correct?
For the office, correct.
Yes. Do you intend to lease it to one?
I'm sorry. It's most likely going to be James's company.
Okay, perfect. So.
Right. This is a real mixed use, right?
Correct.
He's going to live upstairs and work
I was
downstairs.
noticing that the elevator accessed the residences and the office, and so that was a little bit of my question there.
Yeah.
Do you know if the other 2 units, because I believe you'll be occupying one of them, so there'll be 3 other units, excuse me, for sale or for rent? Just curious.
They will be for sale, but
Perfect.
will
Okay.
likely be rented. So we're going to map it.
Okay. The car lift, I have a few questions about this. The timing of it, how long does it take for the car or elevator to rise? and
90
fall?
seconds,
90 seconds.
up
And-
or down. Yeah.
Up or down? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So a minute and a half.
Yeah.
So when the elevator is in the lifted position, obviously that driveway looks flat. There's no issue. And downstairs below, it's a concrete pad as well.
Yeah, there's a pit, but yeah.
A pit. Okay, so is there any sort of safety protocol that there's?
So at the top, we have the enclosure around it.
Mhm.
That enclosure has to be operated by a fob
Mhm.
or a button. most likely a fob if you're coming in your car, and the gates will open. Once the gates open, there's a trip switch that then takes the safety off of the lift. And so now the lift can operate provided you push the lift button, and then the lift will come up. It's usually kept down.
Okay.
All right. And so when you push the button and you're on the driveway side, the lift comes up, you drive your car on, the gates then shut behind you, and there's also a podium. There's a control. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yep.
On the lift itself that you would then push the button and the lift goes down. And in the garage, there's also a gate that would then open when you get to the lower level and allow the car out. So so those are the safety precautions that it has.
So the default situation is that the car lift is down in the basement and there's basically a big hole.
The car lift is over the hole. So the car lift is down in the basement. It's a platform.
Correct.
Right? And it stops at the floor level.
Right.
And then there's equipment, the rest of the lift, mechanics is below it in the pit.
Right.
And the gates are closed.
Yes. At the street level.
At the street level, the gates close.
The gates close, but what do you see across the ground?
Across the ground, you see a platform that will have a pattern material on it that matches the driveway.
Okay, so at no point is there
It
like a gaping hole that someone could fall into?
Oh, no, right.
Okay, that's
Correct.
what I'm trying to understand.
That's
is that if
what
it's
I was
more
trying to
like
understand
a system that
too.
goes Up and down. Okay.
Yeah.
Understood. In terms of alerts for the car system, when someone is coming up, imagine someone's trying to leave and some's trying to come in. How are they going to be alerting each other? Is there going to be sound?
So there's a
visuals?
light.
A light.
Yeah. So the light, if the gates, if you're approaching in your automobile on the street and you see the light, and we can select whatever color we want, he
Sure.
said, yeah, let's just call it red.
Okay.
If you see the red light is on, that means someone is operating the lift in the garage and is going to be coming up. And so you should not be pulling into the driveway.
Perfect. And then
Right.
at that point, you have a 1 to 2 minute wait for this person to come out. So
Right.
while that car is idling, they're just sort of idling in front of the building in the street. Is that
Either
correct?
that or they've driven around the block or something.
Okay, perfect. They'll just do a lap and come back.
Right.
All right. On that same note, for Amazon deliveries, drop-offs, we've been doing a lot of questions about things like that on other projects in the
Yeah.
city. Do you guys have a designated spot? Is this just you expect it to be quick and simple?
Yeah, I mean, we all have Amazon trucks coming to our houses multiple
all
times
the
a day.
time? Okay.
Although we have, the staging area in front for the trash,
Yes.
those are actually, there's parking spaces there, so we can't take over the parking spaces. So I would imagine Amazon's going to do what Amazon does. It'd be great if they would pull in the driveway.
Okay. But again, if
Right.
then all of a sudden someone needs to get out and there's an Amazon truck in the driveway, that's a little problematic. Okay.
Yeah.
Understood. Residential bikes are in the basement, correct?
The residential bikes are in the basement, correct?
And then to access those, they'll be going up and down the elevator with their bicycles.
I would say the passenger elevator, yes.
Passenger elevator. Okay, thank you. And the foundation system, you briefly touched on it. Could you remind me what the foundation system you'll be using is around the perimeter?
So the actual foundation horizontal will be a mat slab, probably 18 inches
Okay.
thick. And then the excavation, what's interesting is that both buildings on the sides of us have basements that are at least 20 feet deep. Roger and his wife that were just here, they have a basement below that historic home that CAW did. That is 21 feet below grade.
Wow.
And he's 5 feet off the property line. So excavation is going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
We've got this little sliver on each side. So we're assuming that we'll have a soldier pier, so wide flange beams drilled
Yep.
into the ground and then wood lagging put between them
Perfect.
to hold that soil, most likely on Roger's side. On the 636 side, that building is just 12 inches away from the property line. So we may not even need shoring over there once they get into it.
Yeah, that was part of my question, was looking at the A 2.00, your, concrete foundation wall is pulled off of the property line, but mildly so. So it didn't look like there was enough room for a secant wall. So I was wondering
Yeah.
if it was the soldier pier.
Yeah. right.
Okay. Okay, and my final question is in regards to the concept that your project is going to be an all-electric building. Was that a personal choice?
Yeah.
Okay. And then do you know about how many amps you're going to need for this building? Are you going to need a transformer on site? If so, where are you going to
So
put it?
good question. The transformer is a transformer that was planned for, as Mr. Lynn said, we've been at this for
A while.
a long time. This project was actually, it predated 636 Waverly. And when it came time to propose this project, shortly after 636 Waverly, because this went on hold, well, we couldn't do what we wanted to do. Yeah, so it,
So you have
It's been out
planned
for a
for it.
while.
You've got a location
So-
for it.
it's going to be in the sidewalk. I'm sorry, it's the existing transformer in the sidewalk was planned for.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, and then I do have one more question, actually. So with the car lift, when it goes down into the basement, if you put it in reverse, it looks like there's enough space there for a car. What is that space intended to be used for? I see that it's got the sewage ejector pump vault in the ground, but what is the remainder of that space to be used for?
It's just leftover space.
Okay,
I mean,
Any
it's not
utilized-
intended to be a car.
okay.
I don't know, you probably could fit a car there.
It's a question. Do you need another parking space?
Yeah, right.
Right. All right. Does anyone else have any questions at this time? No, I think we're all set. All right. Thank you, Mr. Hayes, for your
Right.
presentation. You
Yep.
can have a seat.
Bet.
And at this
Thank
point,
you.
we're going to close questions and we'll turn it over to the board for comments. I am going to ask that moving forward, we're going to try and make sure we keep our comments concise, forward-thinking, and then, questions are the time that I really want us to spend a lot of time asking what we need. And then with the comments, it really should be our summaries. So would like to begin final comments and thoughts. David, do you want to kick us off?
I think we've sort of covered everything adequately, the comments that we've been making are reasonable, all of them. I would say that the more serious questions are about issues about the planting. That's all I hear that might be kind of additional to any other thoughts about the building. And I think that the circulation in the building works rather well, even if there is a kind of a crossover between office use and residential use. And the apartment planning is excellent, and the actual tight site and use of open space seems to be very adequately addressed. That the shape of the building more or less seems to be the result of that program itself, and that the exterior textures are appropriate to the city's request for less concrete. I think since the earlier building next door was somewhat objectionable to some people within the city, so that I find the exterior materials to be adequate texturally, so that the building is friendlier than just a concrete building. So I think it's pretty complicated building, actually, when you really think about it, having to get the cars to the cellar and the separation of functionality between office and residential use. But it's pretty well done. My comments.
Peter, would you like to go next?
Sure, thanks. Thank you, and thank you, Architect Hayes. I think the neighbor at 650 was entirely correct that this building does an exceptional job of deferring and recognizing the historic building to the left. The new paseo you've created in the courtyard are wonderful. They're beautiful. They're going to be wonderful spaces, and I'm really pleased and excited to see them, both for the neighbor's sake and for the whole community's sake. It's a real good example of how to do something like that. It's an urban courtyard. The paseo is a great way for the office workers to be integrated into the community. So many things about that are really good. So hats off to the architects for pushing that forward. I just want to leave that without, I don't want that to go unnoticed. I think it's really a good stroke of work you did there. I have three concerns, I guess, or three things I'd like to see if the architect can work on. So one of them is the metal screening on the front, the privacy screening. I think it has the effect of making the building rather like a big box. And I'm concerned about that. It's a dark metal, and to have it be just a straight looking facade when they're closed, I don't think is good. One thing that's nice about the building at 636 is that it has this deep interplay of light, of shadows and form coming forward, and it gives it a lot of textural variety, which I've grown to like more and more, even though it is all concrete. That I think the screens would conceal that. I would wonder if they're really necessary, or if there's a way to do it with a different material than the rest of the building to mitigate the apparent boxiness of the building. When seen from the side, from the left side especially, with the sidewall being a corrugated metal and the screens being a similar color and texture, I think the effect is just a large box of corrugated metal, and I don't think that's good. So I'd like to see if the architects could give some thought to how to keep the texture of the building as well. So many of Hayes Group's buildings have this wonderful interplay of shadow and depth and light as the structure shows through. And I think that's lost here. My second concern is just to do as much as we can to minimize the impact on 636. So I was asking earlier in questions about if that concrete wall could be modified a little bit where it doesn't impact your privacy, but just to make a bigger difference to the neighbors. So at the fourth floor level, if you can lower that wall a little bit, that every foot helps them just get more sky into their view. At the third floor level, if there's a way to either make an opening or do something different on that concrete where the planter is, or the terrace to get to the planter. Obviously you have to comply with the code, but if there's ways to make that more open, more visually interesting for the neighbors, I think that's a win-win. Overall, this is going to be a pretty big impact on 636 Waverly. They have dramatic views on the third and fourth floor in almost every direction, and they will not once your building goes up. They're not necessarily entitled to that, but that is the fact. So to the extent that you can help that, that would be appreciated. So again, if you could just look at those things before the final design. Lastly, as I walk by these buildings a lot, and just the other day, it struck me that the landscaping on 636 is really coming into life. There's a large tree in front, which is in full bloom now, and it really makes a big difference. It really helps offset the visual bulk in the neighborhood that we have in Palo Alto, where we're just getting used to taller buildings and higher density. I think the architect's entirely correct and wise to put in more landscaping and promote it. Because I go by these buildings a lot, I know that the landscaping on the back of 636 has not been successful. They also propose to have a vine screening growing up the wall of the building, and it's not really taking off. It's not maintained because it's on the back of a public parking lot, really. It's not high interest for the owner. So I'm going to come back again to my colleagues that this building will be much more successful if the landscaping is successful. The current conditions of approval by the city are not really adequate to ensure that. We heard staff say they don't have a mechanism to do it, but I would be in favor of us finding some way to push out that it is important that the landscaping thrive. So I'd like to see something done or some measure of assurance that it's really going to be what we're seeing in these renderings. So those are my three things again: the privacy screening, the impact to 636, and the landscaping. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken, for your presentation. And actually, my concerns are pretty much aligned with Peter's. So regarding the planting, when I look at the section on 305, it kind of indicates that the planters are raised. And I know that from what you said, Ken, that's not the intent. I just want to make sure like that's flushed out in as you develop this. So, because in your landscape plans, there are, good sized trees shown on these planting areas, which means it needs a significant amount of soil and irrigation and weeding and all that good stuff. and really want to make sure, like, whether it's stepping the concrete like you show on the 4th floor, or, it's going to need to have some way to get that much dirt up there to plant. And I think having those planting areas at every level walkable versus raised, I think what you said, Ken, I think is a great intent. And it requires a little structural gymnastics to make that happen. And I would really urge you to flesh that out. On the stair tower on stair 2, I think the intent I was understanding is that there, between those kind of the vine channels, there'd be openings in between. And I think that would really make that stair 2 much friendlier for, I know it's not intended to get a whole lot of use, but having sill height and the vine growing and then having the, natural light into that stair, I think will go a long way. Despite being back stair, I think the planting plus views would really help. Your elevation on 302, which is what I think 636 sees, is exactly, Peter's concern and mine, that there's residences on all these levels and you have these lovely gardens on the other side of that concrete wall. I think we should share that view with the neighbors, because they're like entry porches, just like our neighborhoods. We don't really try to hide who's going into their own house, right? So I think having garden visibility from your next door neighbor is not a bad thing. I think, however, you can work out the entry porches and canopies to at least give some peak of those landscaping on your elevation at 302, I think will go a long way. Those are, the planting and views from 636 are my major concerns, and I echo Peter's, in like commending you for how thoughtfully you've designed it against apparently our project at 650 Waverly, and which is a lovely house, lovely yellow color house. And I think how you've deferred to that is really great. And I would urge you to share a little bit of that with 636 on the north side as well. One last comment about the screens. It is on Waverly side, massing wise, right on the cover, I totally see your intent of those screens, but it is north facing or northeast facing. So even if it means like making it a little bit more open than the picture sample that we saw, I think the massing intent is nice, but I think it needs to be a little bit more open. It's not like you're trying to cut a whole lot of sun from the northeast side. So that's all. Thank you so much for your presentation.
All right. I have two pretty minor comments. Is one that I am in full agreement with my fellow board members about the plant maintenance. I think that this project does, it talks about the green corridors on either side. It talks about the plants, how they're, very thoughtful every step of the way. So we just want to make sure that that really is carried through and brought to life. And while I understand staff's concern about not being able to have the mechanism to do long-term inspections on the life and thriving of the plants, I do understand Board Member Balte's concerns about this, that with this project really is interwoven with the plantings. And so we just want to really make sure that it is well thought out. I would encourage you guys for next time to make sure that there is a little bit more information regarding the maintenance plan, maybe just understanding what type of irrigation systems, understanding how to access the planting portions. Are there doors that can open on that stairwell? Are there openings like Board Member Adcock presented or suggested? Just a little bit more information regarding the plants and their lifespans and maintenance and things like that. And you guys clearly have a wonderful landscape architect on the team, so fully capable of handling that item. My last comment is in regards to the parking turnarounds. I'd like to see better diagrams for that, really understanding the spaces. And I can tell that this is, it's good intent. I'm always a big believer that I always think it's wonderful when you have the parking, especially for residences. No one wants to park down the street and then walk to their building, right? So it's a wonderful item that you're adding in. And because you're adding it, we want to make sure that it's, as straightforward and simple as possible while still being compliant. So I just say give that once over, right? One more time, make sure that these cars can get in and out with some ease there. Okay, so that's really it for my commentary. And to summarize the full board, I'm going to go through what we heard the full board say and make sure that you guys have a clear understanding for what we'd like to see for next time. So number one is the plant maintenance, really the sort of details of it, the intent of it, and having a better understanding of how this is going to be operating long-term. Number two would be the parking, just getting a better diagram to understand the ins and outs of how that's going to work. Some sort of visual for the lift in open position and closed position, I think would also be helpful just from, understanding and that everyone's sort of very clear on how this is going to look in both positions from each level. The metal privacy screening and hand in hand with that is just sort of a materials board that's going to be a little bit more exciting to look at. We'd love to have the real samples. Photographs are good, but real samples are better. And we understand the chaos that sometimes happens with forgetting something at the office. So, but getting a better understanding of what that metal privacy screening is, whether it's more open, as Board Member Adcock said, whether it's just maybe too much in general, as Board Member Balte said. So we'd like to have a loop around to that and a better understanding of that. Finally, the visual impact to the neighbor at 636, really understanding what can be done there to make that, appearance a little bit nicer and softer for that neighbor that is in that position. Overall, everything's clear on those points moving forward? All right, so I would just like to summarize by saying thank you very much for your presentation. I think it's a beautiful project. I think that the neighbor coming in speaks volumes about how this project's being handled and the thoughtfulness of it. And we will now take a vote to see what the next step is. So,
Excuse me,
Yes, please.
I'm not sure I heard you say anything about the impact on 636.
so that was my final comment, that we really want to see them come back with a more understanding of a better visual impact to 636.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, so I spaced out.
Nope,
Thank you.
not a problem. I wanted to make sure I covered everything. I appreciate you bringing it back.
And then a question for staff, if I could, is there a
Please.
reason we can't make a conditional approval today?
Yes, the CEQA is not ready. We can't get a recommendation on a project without CEQA.
So,
It's another 6 months of, okay.
yes, so while we are waiting on CEQA, we are at the point where we cannot move forward today we cannot vote for approval today because we are waiting on CEQA, but I think we can maybe make our sentiments known. We could do a straw poll across the board if we feel comfortable with this project moving forward, just for fun. So let's do a straw poll. How do you feel?
Yeah, I think absolutely, like planning entitlement always takes way longer than we ever want. And so if our feedback from today gets you moving on to unit design development, construction documents, while, the check boxes are going forward on CEQA, I think that would be great.
Yeah, straw poll. I also agree with that. I would like to see this project move forward.
Sure, subject to the comments we made, of course.
Yep.
Agreed.
Excellent. All right, now we'll take our formal vote.
Would you like a motion then?
Yes, please, let's get a
So,
motion.
I'll move that we
Apologies.
continue this project to a date uncertain, subject to the comments outlined by Chair Rosenberg.
Second?
Call for a vote.
And we call for a vote.
Board Member Adcock,
Yes.
Board Member Hirsch,
Yes.
Board Member Balte,
Yes.
Chair Rosenberg,
Yes.
motion carries 4-0.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next on the agenda items, we have the approval of city minutes. So we first of all have the city minutes for February 15th, 2024. Anyone like to make a motion or have any comments or additions or deletions?
I have a couple of very minor corrections.
Okay,
On page 35,
packet page
Yeah,
35. Yeah,
back at page 35. Fourth paragraph from the bottom, that the sentence that says for the drawings, I think it should say with the drawings.
So the full sentence is Board Member Adcock inquired if the approved drawings gave businesses the ability to go to any vendor for the drawings. You want to say to the drawings?
With the drawings.
With the
I think
drawings.
that's what this whole parklet project is, that there's basically boilerplate drawings to take it to a vendor to fabricate. Other, on page 38. And I'm a little hazy on my memory on this, but fourth paragraph from the bottom, the sentence just, or I guess partial, the
Sorry,
350 square feet if made to break up the parklets. I think it should say every 20 feet, not every 3 feet. I don't think we're breaking up the parklet every 3 feet.
Sorry, where was the second one?
It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 line up from the bottom on page 38.
So in that fourth paragraph of text from the bottom, Board Member Adcock clarified that if it were to become a requirement, then the 350 square foot could not become the upper limit due to the 20-foot times 8-foot limit of the parklet and could not be contiguous 350 square feet. If it was made to break up the parklets every 3 feet.
It should say every 20 feet, I think.
That's correct.
We'd have mini parklets. if that
I'm
was
not
the
sure I recollect her saying 20 feet though. I think she said,
case. But 3 feet doesn't make any sense.
I'm just
Yeah,
reporting what I recollect you saying.
could be.
So we might need to get some clarification from staff on what was actually said at that time. But yes, if it was broken up every 3 feet, we'd have parking bike paths, right?
I support the record saying 20 feet.
Okay.
Last one is on packet page 49. This is regarding the, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth paragraph down. Last sentence, one line up, not achievable due to, there's missing words, frit pattern on insulated glass, not just,
Which page again?
sorry, page 49. So which were not achievable due to frit pattern on insulated glass not usually being set on number 1 surface. I think that's all of my corrections. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else have any comments or adjustments? Board Member Hirsch?
Yes, just one, actually, in the same minutes here. Packet page 48, the third line down from the top, I think I intended to say Embarcadero rather than Pescadero.
I was wondering about that when I was reading this. Like, I don't know about this.
Okay.
Could you remind me which packet page again?
48.
48,
Oh, I'm a 38.
third line down.
You got that, Claire?
Yes, that one right there.
That's a big trip.
Sorry, I couldn't find on page 35 the language you were referencing. You said it was the,
So packet page
Fourth
35, 1,
par-
2, 3, 4 from the bottom. The
4
sentence.
from the
yeah,
bottom.
from the
Okay,
bottom.
that's why.
Says
Sorry, I
Board
was
Member
going from the
Adcock
top.
inquired if the approved drawings gave businesses the ability to go to any vendor for the drawings. She'd like to change it to with the drawings.
Okay, okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, can we get a motion for the minutes?
We accept the minutes.
Second?
Approval of minutes has been moved to be approved and seconded. Do we need a vote?
Board Member Adcock,
Yes.
Board Member Balte,
Yes.
Board Member Hirsch,
Yes.
Chair Rosenberg,
Yes.
motion carries 4-0.
Okay, and for that, we are at all of the items on our agenda for today. There is an ad hoc meeting for 300 Pasteur, which will be with board members Balte and Hirsch to follow this meeting. Are there any final questions or comments from staff or ARB members? All right, then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate
you.
it.